All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the personal channel. And today, who am I here with?
Kehinde Hopkins.
So really quick, who am I here with?
Paige Heller. I'm from UIW in San Antonio.
So Kehinde, you are a student journalist, right?
Yes, I'm editor-in-chief of our student publication, The Rambler, at Texas Wesleyan University.
And what major are you?
Communication arts with an emphasis on journalism.
So really quick, Paige, why don't you tell us a little about yourself, like how you got into journalism, all that good stuff.
Growing up, I always wanted to go into like the education field. I don't think I really started thinking about journalism until like maybe my senior year. I always did yearbook growing up and I absolutely adored it. I loved it. And I think it was my senior year, I had a sit-down conversation with my yearbook advisor, and I was telling her how I was stressed out and didn't know if I wanted to go into like history or English, and she was like, Paige, like, why don't you do journalism? And I was like, what's journalism? She was like, it's basically what we've been doing in yearbook. And ever since then, like I looked it up that year, and like I just fell in love with the concept of like telling the truth and just like getting people's stories out there, and yeah.
I've always known, like since I was little, that I wanted to write like as a living or for a living. And I guess eventually, like 6th grade, they made us do that little project where we chose our dream job or our preferred career path, and journalism turned out to be something that made sense to be able to write and then make money while doing it. So it kind of shifted from like what I was passionate about. At first I wanted to be a sports journalist because I really love soccer, I still do. And I wanted to write about soccer and make money doing that. And then my passion shifted and I wanted to be a music journalist and just write all about music, write for stuff like Rolling Stone or Pitchfork or whatever. And then I realized, that's not the most feasible option, and there's not a lot of money in that industry. It's very hard to crack into it. And then coming here to Texas Wesleyan, and being in the mass communication program, and then seeing just the Rambler from afar and always hearing about it, and I saw it as a opportunity to really figure out what I wanted to do in journalism. And now I'm here, and now I think like a career in maybe general news journalism or political journalism is my calling. The path is always winding in different directions, you know.
So Kehinde, the reason I have you here today is because I have 6 basic questions that someone who is not that well versed in knowing stuff about student journalism, these are questions that they may have. So the first question I have for you is, what exactly do student journalists do?
I think that there's no real difference between the journalist and the student journalist other than share the experience. But for the most part, the student journalists have to do the same thing journalists do, which is reflect a community back at themselves and be the voice for those people in that community, especially those who are the most marginalized in that community. So when it comes to student journalists, it's about their university or the surrounding area of their university.
I think student journalists, they first and foremost practice and learn. And I feel like they really capture the stories and the essence of the universities that they're at. I feel like a lot of times students might not know like the whole capacity or like everything that's going on at the university that they attend. And the student journalists are able to get stories out there about like organizations, like events happening on campus, but also like, when it comes to like hard-hitting news, like at my university, I had students covering like the elections and like all of Trump's policies that he's trying to pass right now, and like other students might not be able to like know that or like find that.
So you say that a lot of students at Incarnate, which is where you're from, a lot of students there like to take news that is happening like outside of campus, outside of San Antonio, and they try to localize it as best as they can. How exactly do they find their stories? Like, how does that come about?
Most of the time, honestly, I don't even know where half of our journalists find their stories. I think just like when they're scrolling on social media and they see something appear, they'll like come up to me or like the other advisor and just be like, hey, like, can I write a story about this? And I'm like, yeah, 100%. Other times we'll have like little meetings every month to discuss like upcoming events happening on campus, like Greek Life Recruitment Week and stuff like that, or like happening in San Antonio. I think starting next week or in 2 weeks, we have Fiesta, which is like a whole citywide like fun party, basically just celebrating like the culture and like the life of San Antonio. So we'll go down the list and see what events are happening that month, and then write them down and then assign writers as well.
I mean, it's all about listening. Like, sure, you can go on your campus website, or you can do things like that, but the most important thing is to really be immersed in the community, be involved on campus, so that you actually know what's going on there. Otherwise, you're just gonna get what's spoon-fed to you by the administration, what they want to be covered, what they want people to see the university as. But the most important part is to really be involved, to be talking to people. I mean, I really think that like journalism is transcribing humanity, so you have to be an active part of your community, of your humanity. Like you can't be, not that you can't be an introvert, but you can't be a hermit, you know what I mean? You have to be out there, you have to be in and amongst people to be able to know what people care about and what's happening to the people.
There's a fine line between not knowing what's going on and being ignorant.
Yeah, I mean, ignorance is an really important part of journalism. Journalism wouldn't be a thing without ignorance. Even for the journalist, on this journalist part, like journalist's whole job is asking questions. So a journalist needs to be ignorant. If the journalist knows everything, then they're not going to know what the reader needs to know. You know what I mean? So ignorance is a very important part of journalism, but I'd say that it's important, like the most important part of journalism is one, being open to your ignorance and being aware of it, so that you can, deal
with it.
So that you can be the person to educate others.
Absolutely. So obviously they're, being a student journalist, you have to write these stories and you have to get them published, sent in to your editor and all that. Are there any rules that you have to follow as a journalist?
I think just making sure to remain unbiased and to always tell the truth, like no matter what side it is. I know nowadays a lot of us have very strong opinions on certain matters, and at the end of the day, it's not our job to give our opinions, it's our job to get the news out there and to spread information. So just making sure that like when I'm writing a piece that might be like close to my heart, close to my morals, just like reminding myself like, don't put your personal opinion on this. Also to write in AP style format, making sure that like before I send in my piece, or like before I have students send in their piece, making sure that's formatted correctly. So I think those are the two rules, just like staying unbiased and like telling the truth, and AP style format.
When you're writing stories, what are some formats that a student journalist would follow when they're writing a story?
I guess just really the journalistic genres. Like news stories are obviously huge, which is just about objective truth and fact and what happened, when, what, where, why, how, and all those things. And there's feature stories, which is more zeroing in on a particular thing that's happening, whether it be a person or organization, and really giving them a very specific shine. And of course there's columns and opinion pieces, which are far more subjective, and just journalists using their exclusive voice to cover some sort of issue that they think is worth someone having their 2 cents on. I guess those are the big ones. Yeah, news, features, columns, and editorials.
How do interviews work for you?
Well, we do like a wide variety of interviews. Of course, like on TV, we'll do action shots and like go up and like record. KUIW, which is our radio station, they just do on-air interviews.
Well, an interview is really just a conversation, but just more formal. When you go into an interview, you really want to make sure that at the end of the day, it's the thing you've been doing your entire life, which is just having a conversation with people and doing what's most natural to you, which is asking questions. You think of like a 5-year-old, all they do is ask questions. Yeah. So it's really tapping into that ignorance. Ignorance is a very important part of journalism. Like you have to be ignorant if you want to be a good journalist, to be honest with you. But yeah, an interview, you just want it to be a conversation, and you want to make sure, because of course there's that added element to where the person who you're interviewing knows you're doing it for a reason, that you want to make sure it's not transactional, that they don't feel like that you are only doing this because you're trying to get something out of them. It needs to be as human as possible. Like I said, humanity, ignorance, very central to journalism.
I've heard you talk about this one concept before. It's called social capital?
Yeah, so it's like the day-to-day interactions that you have. It's kind of the score, like the credit score or the capital that you have with another person. When you first meet someone, your social capital is kind of at 0. You meet them, hi, how's it going? Nice to meet you. Firm handshake, look them in their eyes. Your social capital goes up. Give them a compliment, goes even farther up. Insult them, it goes down. So when you're interviewing people, you really need to make sure, you have to know that you're constantly trying to build up your social capital and then spend it. So you can't go in there asking super hard questions, because that requires you spending your social capital. If you just met someone, you can't just ask them a super hard question. That goes for a day-to-day life too, not just interviews. They have to trust you. That social capital, trust is a form of social capital, trust, respect, all these things. So you have to really build that social capital, ask the easy questions, do some small talk, really get to know the person, garner their trust before you ask the really hard questions and spend that social capital, because it's there to be spent. You don't want to just butter up your interviewer and just, make it a super easy interview, give them a bunch of compliments. Eventually you have to ask the harder questions, spend that social capital. So that's kind of how that goes. But I'm not an expert on it.
Have a soft approach, but then, iron out that, harder approach.
Yeah, get to where you need to get, but you have to know how to get there.
What do you mean by how do we do interviews?
So, say you're writing a story and you have to come up with 3 sources minimum.
How do we figure out the people to interview?
And also how you get in contact with them as well.
Yeah, so if it's one of the sports teams at UIW, we have to go through their media director. So we have to contact them first before we're able to interview any athlete. Even if it's our friend, we still have to go through that route. And then if it's administrative faculty member, I want to say that we have to go through, there's so many different media departments on campus, so just making sure we go through the right media person. And then when it comes to outside stories, I think we don't really go through anyone. I think we just go up and ask them if we can interview them. Because I haven't had any students have any issues with that, or I haven't had any issues with that myself.
That's good. I go to a smaller university, so there's only 2 main people that I have to go to. If we're going to athletics, we go to our sports information director, and then if it's to interview let's say the president of our school, we have to go through marketing and communications. Basically, they're our lifeline between the administration of the school and us as student journalists.
Okay.
So funny enough, they only implemented that rule this past semester. So
oh wow! So before it was just kind of free going, interesting.
And the thing is, a lot of professors there, they're very open and free to communicate with us. They've built such a strong bond with the school paper.
Yeah, I love going to a small school for that exact reason.
So this is a more personal question. Why did you, Paige Heller, get into student journalism?
It's a great question. So at my time at University Incarnate Word, primarily when I was an undergrad, I did the school newspaper. I started working for the school's magazine. I actually helped create the school's magazine. I've done radio. I've helped out with TV, literally all different types of journalism. I think I wanted to become a student journalist just because I wanted the practice, and also I'm very passionate about UIW. I think that was the perfect school for me, perfect choice. And I love getting, news out there for UIW, and I like showcasing UIW in any means. And also, whenever I was in high school, I had the school's newspaper advisor email me my senior year and just kind of talk me through how the newspaper ran, and I instantly fell in love with it. And in the beginning, well, still am, I do a lot of the layout. So before it was an online newspaper that we sent out, and so I designed that and would lay it out every month. And now I actually created a website, so now it's flowing a lot better. And so that's also another part of journalism that I think people not sleep on but kind of forget about, is more the design aspect as well. So between that and him reaching out to me, I was like, wow, this just also feels like a great community to be a part of.
Would you say that designing and doing page layout, would you say that that's a great way to get into marketing if that, somewhere down the line becomes a career opportunity?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think a lot of times people think journalism is just writing, but that's really not true. Like in the journalism field, there's so many different paths that one can take, and there's so many ways that you can get so much practice in within those paths. I can firmly and full-heartedly say that like with my time designing the newspaper and laying it out for so many years, I can easily like use that as like reference to my work and add it to my portfolio for me to get a marketing job.
Absolutely, that's always looking for new career opportunities.
Yes.
So I guess that leaves us with our last question. What advice do you have for somebody who wants to get into student journalism when they get to college?
Just do it. Like as soon as possible, do it. Try to take advantage of every opportunity that you have. Fail plenty of times, fail 1,000 times, but do it. Like I think fear is really the biggest thing that stops you from achieving anything and everything. So I mean, overcome it, do it as soon as possible, do it as much as possible, do it as often as possible, do it as best you can, and that's really all that matters.
For inspiration, what are some lessons that you have learned from trial and error?
Planning. That time moves forward and you can never get it back. So if you need something done as soon as possible, do it as soon as possible. Contact that source as soon as you can. When it comes to journalism, it's all about time. As time goes on, the stories get old, no longer important. So just know you're always racing against the clock. So be cognizant of that and try to get ahead of the curve always.
Say yes. I mean, I know in the beginning it's always like you're always going to be worried about saying yes because you don't know what you're exactly getting yourself into, and like it might be a little scary seeing like how many other people are like really good at it, and you're like, oh, like I don't know if I could be good at that, like I don't know if that's really me. But like I said earlier in the interview, like it's also about practice. So like say yes, get that practice in, and who knows, maybe you'll love it. And like if you really feel like it's your place, like if you say yes, like that's one step closer to following your passion. And another thing is internships. Take the internships. If you
can get one, that is.
Yes, if you can get one. Which means like apply. Just continue to apply. For student journalists, other than like getting that working at your school, it's so important to get that working outside of your school. Because it just opens up a whole new realm for you, so much more knowledge for you to take in and to learn, and to have fun with it. Like, yes, there are certain guidelines and rules that we have to follow. That way, like, no one sues us, and that we don't like harm anyone else, and that we stay true to like the information. But just at the end of the day, make sure you're having fun. Like do funny little bits and like, maybe go out there, because journalism is so wide and such a big variety of things that you can do. Grab some microphones and do interviews, or like grab microphones and go around for a TikTok interviewing people like that too. Just make sure that like you never stay still. Have fun with it, be open-minded. Yeah.
Well, Paige, that's honestly all the questions I have for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being part of this interview. When I joined the Rambler Media Group, which is our student news publication, I joined with this guy actually. He and I were both content producers, and now me being a co-broadcast director, he being the editor-in-chief, he's my boss. I've seen a lot of growth in this guy. He's definitely the most passionate student journalist that I've been with. In any situation I could vouch for him. So
I appreciate that, bro.
So
likewise.
Thanks for doing this interview with me, dog.
Yeah, of course.
And that's all I have for you guys. If you wouldn't mind, leave a like on this video, comment, and subscribe. I will see you guys in the next one.
Bye, guys.